Welcome to A Better Divorce podcast, where we have conversations about the emotional, financial, and legal issues that are on your mind or should be on your radar if your goal is to keep your divorce out of court. I'm collaborative divorce attorney and mediator Andrea Vacca, and I know that how you divorce matters to your long-term well-being. That's why it's my mission to help you have a better divorce with as little acrimony as possible, so that you can create the best life possible on the other side of your marriage. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to have T.H, Irwin, and Jessica Klingbaum here today, famously known as the ExExperts. Jessica and T.H are the founders of ExExperts and the Divorce Etc. podcast. They've been best friends for almost 30 years, and they found themselves getting divorced at the exact same time 15 years ago. Through their experiences, which were very different from each other, but they found that having each other every step of the way was the inspiration for ExExperts, where they now offer free information and resources and community for anyone at any stage of the divorce process. So T.H and Jessica, thank you for being here and welcome to A Better Divorce podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. We're looking forward to it.
And congratulations on the podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome to our podcast world.
Yes, I've been part of your world too. I know you guys are the pros here, so I'm really happy to have you. I'm proud to be one of your ExExperts, and I've been amazed by the growth and the reach that you've had and all the different ways that you're trying to connect and help people at all the different stages of the divorce process. So kudos to you. And I'm looking forward to talking more about how you got started and where you are now and share what you're doing. So I have to say your tagline, I just love it. I don't know if you came up with it, just spur of the moment, if you really, worked it out, but, we've lived it, so we get it. That's a great tagline. So I'd love to know though, what made you start ExExperts? What was it that was the inspiration to say, you know what, I think we have something that we can offer here and then build the platform that you built. So tell us a little bit about that.
So Jessica loves this story.
Well, that's how we met.
Well, that's how we met, but it's because of how we met. Yeah, you do love the how we met story, but how it started stems from that. So there's a little backstory.
I've actually been married and divorced twice. And my first husband and TH were best friends from high school. So TH and I met back when we were in college. She had come up to our campus for a party. And I had heard about her in advance. So I was excited and looking forward to meeting her. And when she came in, I went running over to her and I was like, oh my God, you're TH. And she looked at me and was like
I just did.
Where's Darren? And I go over to Darren and I'm like, that's your best friend? She's a bitch. But P.S., years later, after we'd all graduated from college and moved into the city, we started hanging out together all the time. TH and I became best friends. The guys became best friends. We got married within a month of each other. We got engaged within a month of each other and married within a month of each other. And then 13 years, and our sons were born a week apart. 13 years into our marriages, we found out separately that both of our husbands were having affairs and covering for each other. So our divorce process literally started within a week of each other. And we were really the first of anyone that we knew that was getting divorced. I mean, I think now, 15 years later, it certainly seems like there comes to be a point at an age range where more people kind of start getting divorced. But we were young in our 30s. Our kids were really little. And we would say to each other every day, like, oh my God, can you imagine if we were doing this alone? Every day we could talk to each other like, what did your lawyer tell you today? Did you know about this? Have you heard about this? Because there weren't resources back then like there are now. Back then there wasn't anything. Now there's too much stuff.
Yeah.
We would say to each other, we have to figure out a way to be this for other people going through it alone, because you do not know what you don't know. And it is so dark and scary and overwhelming, but there's so much light on the other side. And we really carry each other through it. And initially it was like, oh, should we do a call-in radio show?
Right.
Sirius was getting big, but in the end, there was just kind of a lot going on for a long time. So we've always had the idea percolating of like, what can we do to be offering all of the stuff that we didn't have during ours to other people who are going through the process.
Great. And you had very different processes. So I know one took much longer than the other. It had a very different experience that you each had. So learning from each other what to do, what not to do, probably in hindsight, looking back now, you had even more to offer, because what you learned in the moment was one thing, but being able to reflect back probably this time since your divorce was very helpful, I would imagine.
I definitely spent a lot of money that Jessica benefited from with my lawyer so that she knew what to say and not spend that money on her lawyer. My divorce took 4 years with someone who is a narcissist, and he was already engaged to somebody else before I knew about the cheating. So it's that mental kind of screw you up kind of scenario that led me through the courts. And Jessica and her husband were able to work it out over a dining room table, essentially, and communicate. I had zero communication with ex, also encouraged by my lawyer. So we learned a lot through our separate processes, but supporting one another through the process is definitely a huge part of how we are where we are today, and a reason why ExExperts started. But it's not all based on the business of divorce. It's friendship, it's emotional support, it's community. Our community, we have like our own little pod community of the two of us. But that was everything, because we were never alone. We didn't have to ever really be alone. And dealing, like, even if one of us was busy on a weekend, we could still always call the other one, and we got it. We understood because we were walking in it together. So now for me, it's 11 years since my official divorce. And we just continue to grow. Like, we grew up together in our 20s as young couples, and then young families. And on the outside, it looked fabulous, right? Behind the scenes for me was a complete train wreck for many years. And the cheating set me free. Mm-hmm. And I think for Jessica, the cheating made her open her eyes. And now we've been able to create this platform to help you with the process. And the most important thing is education, teaching, so that you can make the best choices.
But also the fact that we did have such different divorces allows us to offer two very different perspectives through ExExperts and through the Divorce Etc. podcast. It's not like two people parroting each other and everything that we say. We're always on the same page. We went through very different things. There are things that I can empathize with but can't relate to, and vice versa. And even what our relationships look like now with our exes and how we interact with them or not is also very different. So we really kind of cover the ground of whatever anyone's going through. If someone had a super acrimonious divorce, we have that perspective. If someone had a very amicable divorce, we have that perspective. So like, we can offer more than one opinion and advice coming from different places.
And also post-divorce.
Exactly.
Jessica got married again. I was in a long-term relationship.
Right.
Then she got a divorce. I ended that relationship. Now I'm in a great relationship. Jessica's in. So we're still here, like right here.
Learning from each other.
But yeah, taking it all in, and our kids and everything else.
Yeah. I mean, co-parenting young children versus adult children. I mean, you're both doing that, right? Or young adult children. Or how old are you?
Yeah, no, they're young adult children mostly. They range. TH's oldest is 23. And my youngest is 16, about to be 17. But I also can relate in many ways. I felt like my first divorce in terms of the kids was not crazy hard because my kids were 2 and 4. They didn't really know what was going on. They grew up going to different houses back and forth with our nanny. Like, I don't know that it was that hard on them, but I think that when kids are a little bit older and they really understand what the circumstances, it can be more challenging. Kids may be angry and they may have, feelings of their own that my kids did not. But then my second divorce was years later. My kids were, teenagers. 14 and 12. And so telling them and going through that, I mean, it wasn't their dad. So that, made it a little easier, obviously, but like I can relate when people have kids of different ages going through divorce, because I've been through it when my kids were different ages.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that must help a great deal with the coaching that you do. But an ExExperts is also about bringing together divorce experts in various fields who can come and provide resources for your audience, for your community. So
Right.
you mentioned education is so important. So what kinds of what are you finding, like when you're looking for an expert to add to your roster? What do you want them to be able to do? How do you want them to be able to educate your community?
I would say we want them, first of all, to have a point of view and a perspective that offers something new to our audience. I mean, as you know, as a collaborative divorce lawyer, there are a lot of collaborative divorce lawyers out there. We don't need someone coming on and replicating the interview that we did with you,
Right.
and replicating the article that we have with you on our website. We want someone who has something new to offer, from, like I said, a perspective that we haven't necessarily heard before, or a focus that we haven't really focused on yet. But most importantly, it needs to be, we vet everybody that we invite into the ExExperts community on the expert side. So we need to feel ourselves like this is a person that we trust, that we like, that we would feel comfortable working with if we were to be going through it again. We're not anywhere on our site or in any of our dealings saying this is the lawyer that you need to hire. Mm-hmm. We're saying these are all amazing lawyers. Listen to the podcast, see who you resonate with, look on our website, reach out to these people. We trust all of these people, and these are all people that we would feel comfortable hiring. We think that's really important. I mean, we're not a paid directory. No. It's not like anybody can just come out and be like, oh, I'll pay you whatever, and then we can be on your site.
Right.
It's important to us that when we're looking for new voices and new people, that it's someone that we would bring into the fold ourselves if needed.
And honestly, they have to have the same kind of mission that we do, moving forward, just good communicators, good energy. And listen, I'd love to recommend everybody to Andrea Vacca. But the truth is, that's a very personal decision. So what we really do is we have Andrea tell you guys all about collaborative divorce, what you need to know, what questions you have to ask, what the differences are between collaborative and other options for divorce. And then we help you prepare for your meeting with Andrea. We are going to encourage you to write down all your questions. There are no bad questions. And then we're going to say, you may not have thought of these questions. Add these in. Andrea is being hired by you. So, your relationship with your lawyer is very personal. It's very important in your negotiations and the things you compromise on. And do you feel that your lawyer is really representing you properly behind the doors and when trying to settle and stuff like that? So we would love to say Andrea is the greatest in the world, and she's clearly one of the best because we recommend her as an ExExpert. But you have to decide, and you have to be prepared, and you go into a meeting with Andrea or any expert and say, I have questions. Mm-hmm. I need to make sure you're a good fit for me. ExExperts is helping me get there, and then I'm going to make my choice. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time.
Time, money,
relationship,
emotional investment. It's
your lawyer knows a lot, learns a lot.
So that's all you'll do that through direct coaching with your.
We do it through direct sessions with members of our community. We also do it as best as we can through the podcast interviews.
Yeah.
We will interview our guests and ask them the questions that we know should be asked, so that if someone is listening and they're in the market for a collaborative lawyer, a forensic accountant, a private investigator, a mediator, whatever the case may be, that they can really understand where that person's coming from and if that's going to be someone that they might be comfortable working with based on the answers that they're given. So yes, we do it through direct coaching, but also we try to give as much as we can accessible for free so that people can use the information we're putting out there.
Yeah. I mean, we lead them. Honestly, as you know, every situation is unique. So these are broad stroke guidelines, but when you book a session with either of us or both of us, we will actually help you with a framework and a roadmap and follow up and support you as you move along. We're your girlfriends. We're not your lawyer. We're not your, accountant. We're none of those. And the truth is, once the divorce is done, you need us more than ever because your team is no longer there. They've moved on to somebody else. Right. And now you have to have learned during your divorce as much as you can. And now it's time to put it into play. And we help you move forward and do that.
I want to add also, like, where we're coming from, obviously we have our real life experience, but the fact is when people come to us for private sessions, or even presumably when they're listening to the podcast or on, on our site or following us on social, we're coming from a completely like non-judgmental place. We don't know you. We have no preconceived notions of you or your soon to be ex or how things should go or what's been happening. We're coming in as someone who's like a completely objective listener and giving, information and feedback based on what we know is true, but also things that you or your own close friends or your own family may not have suggested or thought of because of the way that your relationship has always been, or other people that have been divorced have obviously personal experience from their own divorce, but haven't necessarily spoken to the hundreds of experts that we have to put it all together. But like, it's sometimes easier to talk to someone who doesn't know you that well than it is to talk to the people who do, because they're listening, they're trying to connect all the pieces. Like, we're not going to see you in the grocery store. Right. You're not going to have to pick up my kids on Tuesday. Right. It's like it's just whatever you need.
I was just talking to a client about that. We've just started working together, and I said, what is your support system right now? And there was therapy happening, and they spoke about, excuse me?
Essential. We're huge advocates of therapy.
I was like, great. What else? The parents.
You need it.
The friends. Great. What else? And I said, can I recommend some coaching as well? Because your parents and your friends, they're going to take your side and support you. They will be supportive, but they can't give you the objective advice, and they've never been through this, and they don't know all the things that have been going on, and they can only be so supportive. But the Greek chorus is not necessarily the most helpful coaching. So
yeah. And I mean, in our situations with husbands that had affairs, everyone close to us in our lives thought they were really helping us out by telling us how toxic and how horrible our exes were. Like, that was not helpful at all. I already understand the circumstances. I needed to like refocus and be pragmatic and figure out like, where I was going to live and raise the kids and whatever. Like, I just think that people so don't want to see you hurt. And they so want to help you by, like you said, being on your side. And sometimes the feedback that they're giving you is like kind of pushing you back into the hole.
Exactly. We also talk about how to be a good friend, because that's what we have been for one another. And it really doesn't matter what your opinion is. It really doesn't matter what side you're on. If you can just stand in the space and meet people where they are, then you're being the greatest friend. You don't say a word, which is so hard. I was like a super fixer, which fixed nothing. Who fixed nothing? And if you just sit with someone in the space of where they are at that moment, that's being a great friend. And then you can ask, what can I do for you? What do you need? Don't push information. So we also talk about how to be a good friend. And it's not always about divorce. Shit happens all the time, checking in. I'm just kind of taking your temperature today, all that kind of stuff. We encourage you guys to take a different perspective on how to be a friend for people who you really care about.
Right. I know there's like 3 H's or something. Do you need to be heard, hugged. There's another H. I can't remember it, but you have to ask, like, how can I help you? You know,
Right.
some people just want to be listened to. Some people really do need the hug. Some people do need you to do something, some active, you know, they need
Right.
something done
Right.
actually for them. But everybody,
Sometimes when Jessica and I talk, I'm like, do you want to know what I think? And she'll say no. Or she'll say yes. Or she'll say, I'm not ready to hear what you have to say.
right.
So that's a way of saying, I have an opinion, but I'm not putting it on you if you're not ready to hear it.
And from that, I've actually learned, and I use that now with my teenage daughter, honestly, because when she comes home and she's dealing with drama and stuff, I've learned, like, just because she's telling me the story doesn't mean that she wants me to explain all the things I would do. And I think that that's a lot of what we as in human nature do when someone says they're getting divorced. Someone's like, you know, projecting onto them how they would handle it or how they would do it. And sometimes it's like, I'm just telling you the story. I just got to get it out there.
People also like to just, I mean, because we've dealt
Get
with so
involved.
many, they want to go back and be like, oh my God, I saw Jessica today and she told me everything. And I told her, blah, 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 blah. And it has nothing to do with Jessica. It becomes all about that person. And so, you know, there are red flags with friends too. And we talk about that kind of stuff too, because you need to like stick to your own, figure your own stuff out, not have a lot of noise around you. And, you know, different people have different purposes in your life. It doesn't mean you eliminate everybody in your life, but just remember, this is like a going out friend after 2 drinks.
Mhm.
This is going for a walk and talking about deep stuff. And this is like talking about anything, right? Just put it all out.
And so, okay, so there's one-on-one coaching that you do. There's the podcast with awesome guests and hundreds of, what do you have, like
We do all
100,000
the time.
downloads now?
Yeah.
We do.
Okay.
100,000 downloads. Very
100.
proud of that. I mean, I remember in the very beginning when we had like 100. We're like, oh my God,
100 people listen to us.
Right.
They don't even know us.
Right. So it's been very gratifying.
We're
to say
averaging
the
like
least,
1,100 per episode
per
now.
week. Yeah.
It's
Wonderful.
fabulous.
Well, if anyone hasn't listened to the podcast, please just go download it now. Go, you know, go to your
Subscribe,
podcast list and
follow,
yeah.
and same for Andrea's. That's what helps all of us is if you rate and review our podcasts, and always write a favorable comment if you have one, and always email us with feedback. Like we had someone who felt that one of our titles was misleading.
Yeah.
And we would never have known. And we adjusted the title because they felt that what they heard was not really representative
We
of the
felt
title.
like that what they said was valid. And it was a
100%.
perspective we had not thought about. So we then went
100%.
and adjusted it.
Yeah.
Also topics. Like
Right.
we listen to feedback and do interviews based on stuff.
So there's the podcast, there's the coaching. You also do like master classes or something. Like what are those, like very specific, or what are you doing with those? What
a master class is very specific. Sometimes it's led by a sponsor. So if one of our ExExperts or someone just came to us and said, I have an idea, I don't know how to execute it. A master class is essentially a 1-hour learning workshop that people can access virtually. And it's usually a very targeted topic. We just did one not that long ago about moving on from a cheating spouse. And that was just the 2 of us because we know how to move on from a cheating spouse. And we've done one on like a 14-day divorce reset challenge. That was a longer period of time. A masterclass is a super focused topic that we teach you about. We're all about, and Andrea is now too, through this podcast and stuff, teaching you all. Don't be lazy about learning. This is how you lead a great life and you become like us. We're in charge of our lives because we've learned and we keep learning every day. So keep your mind open.
Right.
And, you know, that's what'll help the best.
And I bet you didn't feel that way 11 years ago, right? At the end of your divorce. TH.
I actually felt that way 15 years ago on May 8th at 2008 at like 2:20 in the afternoon. I was hallelujah. But I had an 8, 6, and 4-year-old who were not cheering at all. And their father was MIA for 4 years. And now all of a sudden he's here. And where am I going if he's back? Like So the process and the kids, even if you're happy to be free, can hold you back. But for me personally, that was the first day of the rest of my life. Really. I was grateful.
Amazing. Because you knew something was wrong. You knew, I read
I
that.
was miserable. The cheating set me free. That's not what ended my divorce. My divorce was over the divorce, it took forever. The marriage was over way before that. Right. That's why it's so bizarre that my divorce took so long, but we talk about divorcing special people. And so you can check that out too.
Difficult people.
I like that.
Special, difficult, narcissist, covert, whatever you want to call it. It's a challenge.
So let's talk about the someone at the beginning, whether they're relieved and they feel like I'm free, I'm not crazy, this has been a terrible marriage, and now I can move on, and they're starting on that path, or they're like, maybe like Jessica and her husband, like, this isn't working, someone did something bad, but we need to do this the right way. Like, wherever you are emotionally at the beginning of your divorce, what do you most see people dealing with at this stage, and the people that you're working with? And what's your best advice for how to move forward, how to take those first steps?
I think that the things that people are that first comes to mind when someone finds out that they're getting divorced are like fears around money and the kids.
And where am I going to live?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that we grew up in a day and age of like War of the Roses and Kramer versus Kramer. And I think for us, it was like the gut instinct was, I need to get a lawyer.
Which I did.
And we've come to understand that the first step needs to really be knowing what kinds of divorce options are out there for you, and then getting a lawyer that will fit with the process that you want to have. So I feel like for anyone who's just out there, who's kind of thinking about it or just starting the process, you want to make sure that your divorce lawyer aligns with how you want the divorce to proceed. But I would say, for me personally, my best advice, and I know that it varies based on how acrimonious the divorce can be, but I think that when it comes down to fighting over finances, you have to really value the money. Meaning, put a value. It's not just about the dollars. At the end, for me, for both divorces, the relationships, sustaining relationships with both of my husbands, and to keep them as part of my life moving forward, that was more valuable to me than money. And I know that in both.
Well, Jessica had a full-time, successful career, so.
But with the second time I had already left TV, but it wasn't even about that. It didn't matter. My philosophy was fighting for an extra, who knows, $100,000 or whatever, or even more. Like, if you prorate it and you break it down into how many years I hopefully have left to live, like, is that money really going to have a major impact on my life on a daily basis? The fighting over that extra money would not have been worth it for me personally. What was more important to me was to be able to be like, let's just keep it clean, and like, whatever, you keep that, I'll take what I had, and it's good. And I think that a lot of times people get so caught up in the anger and the resentment about, my whole marriage was a waste, I wasted all these years, or they're angry because their person cheated. Even my husband cheated, but I felt like, okay, but I was able to like say, but he's still my kid's dad. And fortunately, he is, I think, inherently a good person. And I was able to be like, I'm not going to have that kind of fight. So for me, again, every situation is different, but I would say you have to think hard about how much the money is actually worth in your life in the long term, because too many people spend too much time and too much money fighting over money that ends up not being worth it.
And ends up being spent on the lawyer anyway. I would also say that at the very beginning, what I would say is take a minute. Like, literally take a minute. Jessica stayed in bed all weekend. She had a whole weekend of quiet to herself to kind of absorb what's happening.
And cry.
and whatever, but take a minute. Don't do anything rash. But we are like your triage girlfriend nurses. If you are thinking about it and you're not sure what the first best step is, we're your people.
Reach out.
Like what Jessica did and how we coach people is to kind of think forward. What is this going to look like in 5 years? Forget about him. Don't think about percentages when it comes to your kids. Don't even think about dollar signs. Are you still going to live in this state? Are you still going to live in this house? Are you going to be working or not working? How old are your kids going to be? What have you always wanted to do? And then we work backwards.
Right.
So definitely the most important thing is, holy crap, I'm getting a divorce. Take a minute. People are going to come up to you and say, you know what? I really prefer not to talk about it.
Yeah.
Be prepared with that. So that's like the two most important things. Take a minute for yourself and be prepared on how to deal with other people. Thank you so much. I really don't want to talk about it, but yeah, I really prefer. How are your kids doing? Where are you guys going this summer? Tell me something good. I want to hear something good. You can all take all of those lines and use them all the time, because that will protect yourself from doing what you want to do. My parents were in Egypt on a camel when I got the phone call. The universe was looking out for me because I was able to do what was authentically what I wanted to do, which I hadn't done in so many years. Hadn't thought about, what does TH want? What does TH need as a mother, as a person, as a career woman? Take a minute and fend off all the advice and call us, and we will help you navigate your way for when you hire your lawyer. You'll be prepared.
Great advice, emotionally and practically. Make sure you take time for yourself. Think about what is important to you, breathe through it, absorb what's happening, move yourself maybe from the situation, block other people who want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Of course, your family's going to be most important, concerned about you. So
Of course, right.
That was a huge, blessing, so to speak, that they weren't there.
I feel like, and I agree with TH, the idea, your family is important. It took me at least 4 weeks, if not longer, before I actually told my parents that the reason that we were splitting up was because he'd had an affair. I think sometimes the people in your life have such strong reactions themselves that then it like piles on to what you're dealing with. And I had told my mom, like, right now, and dealing with what I'm dealing with, I can't carry your sadness on top of everything that I'm going through. You're going to need to figure out somewhere else in your own life to dump that,
to work with that,
because I can't have those conversations with you. Parents are devastated. Sometimes siblings are devastated. Obviously, kids, it's like you have to create your own boundaries to be able to say, that's not, I'm filled up.
We help you with all of that, setting boundaries, working through triggers, because you have to co-parent with this person who you don't want to be married to anymore, whether it's a mutual decision or it's acrimonious or somewhere in between. Like, coping with all of those things, even though I was happy to be out of my divorce, like, how do I feel bad and not speak poorly about my ex when my kids come home and they're complaining and I really am not a fan of his, and I want to be like, you're right, and learning to hold your tongue.
So hard.
Listen and smile, and I love you and we love you, and that's all you need to remember. And then you go to a boxing class and you punch the hell out of the bag. I did that for many years before my phone call and probably the first year and a half of the divorce.
I talked to a client recently, and a very new client. Everything was just happening in the moment. They had just decided to divorce, and I said, where were you just now? Or and she said, I was at a rage room. She went to one of those rage rooms to like destroy things.
They were back then, yeah. You just destroy stuff, and the sound of breaking stuff, and putting it all. Oh, such a relief.
Oh, this is so good. So thank you so much. So look, I always end my podcast with a question, the same question. And I'd like to know from each of you, what is your one better divorce tip? You each have one, or you have one together? Okay, you have one?
don't lose yourself in the divorce. Take time for yourself every day. You are not selfish. You are not a bad parent. You are not a bad person. Take time for yourself, because there's a lot coming your way, whether it's you're going through it the way Jessica did or mine, and we were opposite ends of the spectrum or somewhere in between. The divorce process is a lot to cope with for yourself. Now you're single. Now you're a single parent, judgment, family, all of the things. Get a therapist, find an activity where you can just kind of be somewhere else. Indulge yourself in things that are really enjoyable for you. And if money's an issue, there's a lot of free stuff out there that you can do. And just don't lose yourself. You don't have to be all things to anyone. You have to be all things to yourself, though. So start with you, and it will trickle down to everybody else. I promise. I promise.
You'll be a better parent, a better friend,
You'll make better decisions. You'll just take care of you. You are not to be sacrificed. You are to now be rediscovered. And that is your job. So don't look away from that, and don't brush it to the side.
Okay. Thanks, T.H. Take care of yourself. And Jessica, what's your better
I
divorce?
would say, and this is something that I've come to realize I don't think I did as well as I could have. If you are getting divorced or you're divorced and you do have kids, make sure to have an ongoing continuous conversation with them over the years. I'm not saying you have to bring it up every week or every month even, but I think that I did bank a lot on the fact that they were so young the first time, and they were so used to it. And so they weren't saying anything, and, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I didn't want to bring it up, because if I brought it up and they weren't thinking about it, then am I going to upset them, kind of a thing. And I think that it's really important. I've learned that it's very important to be proactive and over time to keep bringing it up and just saying things like, hey, by the way, we haven't talked about this in a while, but if there's anything that you're thinking of, or if you have any questions, let me know. Because the way that my kids, whatever thoughts they had in their little heads at ages 2 and 4 were certainly different when they were 12 and 14, and continue to grow and continue to be different. They see things in a different way. And so I do hope my kids are as well adjusted as I think they are with regards to the divorce specifically. I joke that I'll never know until they're in therapy themselves, when they're in their 30s. But I would say, don't be afraid to talk to your kids about it. You don't have to give them all the details. They don't need to know everything, but it's important for you to know how they're feeling and what you can do to be able to make it easier for them.
Give them the space to let them. And if you're asking every whatever amount of time, year or whatever, they know that.
Yeah, it could be once a year. It comes up naturally every now and then based on, okay, there's something happening, a birthday, a school play, whatever it is. And there are little conversations about it, but or they made a new friend and the friend's parents are divorced. There are times that it comes up, and that's a great opening for you to say, we haven't talked about it in a while. How do you feel about that, or whatever? But even if something doesn't come up authentically like that or organically, it's important that you proactively bring it up to just let them know that they can bring it up when they want to, that they don't have to wait for you.
Right. That you're a safe space for them to come to, no matter what the topic is. You are going to listen, and if they want feedback, happy to give it, but you are always here no matter what.
Right. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been, you're some of the first people I wanted on my podcast, and here we are. So I'm so grateful that we were able to do this. So finally, what is the best way for people to find you, reach out to you, other than the podcast? But what else, where do people get you?
Everything really is on our website at ExExperts.com, spelled out ExExperts. You can find the podcast there. Any events we're doing are there. You can click on the homepage to book a private session with us. All of our articles are there. Every podcast actually has a transcript. So if you're more into reading like Jessica is, or you're more into listening like I am, we've got it for you. And then also on our homepage, we'll take you to our social media, to our YouTube channel, and to whatever other programming we have going on. The best thing as far as keeping up to date every week with what we have going on is when you go to our website to sign up for our newsletter.
Great.
Because we share personal stories. We highlight the podcast. We highlight our sponsors who, again, we vetted and we believe in. So we're not just like selling crap to you. We're actually like believing in it.
Yes.
And then some fun, lighthearted stuff. It's easy to consume, and you pick your lane in the newsletter. But it's really, the website is the best place to start.
Okay, everyone. So go to ExExperts.com right now. You'll get all of this information. It's a great website. It's a great resource portal and entree into everything that is Jessica and T.H. and what they can offer. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us, Andrea. We really appreciate it.
And congrats again.
Yes.
We're very excited for you.
Thank you. Well, this has been another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. You've been tuning in to another episode of A Better Divorce Podcast with Andrea Vacca. Thank you for subscribing, leaving your positive comments and reviews, and sharing the show with others. You can watch episodes at vaccalaw.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can listen through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. Bye for now, and remember, you can have a better divorce.